how are things going with starships around the sun? I think that you've got some great stills and images on that website of what looks like Anunnaki spaceships, just incredible images.
Well, okay. One of my friends on Facebook, she's with the this one group, and they've been tracking this stuff for years. And a lot of the first images that turned me on to this came from their group also. And they're still tracking the same images today. She's part of the, I can't remember the name of their group right now. They call these huge images that look like starships, they are saying that that image is Nibiru itself, period. No ifs, ands, or buts. I've caught that same image going back, looking through the Soho camera photographs, and the best image I have is from 2005 from the EIT 304 camera, which is a ultra extreme, ultraviolet, something like that. And here it is coming down the left-hand side of our sun, and it's trailing like a green exhaust of some type. I've shown those images at UFOCon 213, and a lot of other people that were there, they said, Bob, do you realize how big that thing is next to our sun? I said, no extra on this side. They said, that thing's almost the size of our planet. And I had to do further research into that thing, and the ancient Zoroastrian religion in what's now Iran, they have huge wall carvings of the same thing still over there in Iran, about 15, 20 feet long, wide. And the interesting part of these images is that you look downwards and you don't see birds' feet. You see two poles coming down at angles. You see round wheels or a round object at the end of each one. Interesting, a flying craft of some type. And here's an Anunnaki carving right there in the center of this whole huge image. The Zoroastrians call this the Ahura Mazda. Now, I'm not even going to play, with Middle Eastern languages. I've been told many people say it's different things. But here's the Anunnaki Enki standing right in front of it. A couple of images show him looking to the right. A couple of images show him looking to the left in these carvings. Now, my friends that are really good at this Anunnaki stuff say, yes, Anunnaki Enki was the one who started the Zoroastrian religion. And that's why they had these huge wall carvings made showing this huge bird's outstretched wings with the landing gear. Not bird's feet, landing gear. Very clearly. And then when I looked at the image from 2005, was this thing coming down the left-hand side of our sun, and you look at that and you look at the other image of the wall carvings and you match them up, they're an exact match. Now, John Gress, a filmmaker, he started making a movie in 2005 or 6 called One Anunnaki. And he took the same type of image and he had the thing depicting a flying craft coming over the earth. And here's a human looking up at it. Here's the outstretched wings. Here's this huge circular viewing window looking down. So he depicted it exactly using that same type of wall, those huge images from Soho. Now, between 1999 and present day, the Soho satellite with all of its cameras have caught this same image coming in from every point of the compass on the camera, either entering our solar system or leaving our solar system. And several times after 2011, it has caught this huge thing. There's a huge flash in the sky. And the camera caught this huge flash. And this thing comes flying out of the flash, and using my own term here, is quickly decelerating as the picture caught it, coming out of this huge flash. Now, anyone who's ever watched Star Trek, the newer movies, okay, including the last movie where Picard had to go to Romulus, and his ship is being chased by this huge Romulan, it's not Romulus, it's other race that lives on the moon. And this other huge ship was chasing them, and they took out their warp drive engines. And then it suddenly just shot underneath their ship. And then there's a spot where Star Trek has a big flash, and there's the Enterprise zooming out of it. So, 2011, on numerous photographs, I have these huge ships quickly decelerating in the image, or it's trailing dry plasma behind it. Two images I have from SOHO. Here's this ship that had just come out, and you can see it's trailing dry plasma. Then really close to, on the other side of the sun at the bottom, here's this flash. It's quickly decelerating. So SOHO has been picking up these tremendously large ships coming out of whatever term you want to use. Hyperspace, wormholes, warp drive. I mean, we've been bombarded with all kinds of space-type stuff since Star Trek. So all of us can use different types of terms on this thing, but the photographs, I don't think, lie, because they take a photograph every 15 minutes. Now, either these things are caught when they're first showing up, and then they put their cloaking shields on, because they're not in the next 15-minute photograph. I don't know what's happening. SOHO said, and a lot of the MUFON people were saying, Bob, you don't know what you're talking about here. That's cosmic rays hitting the cameras, doing this and doing that and doing this. And I haven't had a chance recently to send you the photographs that SOHO took themselves, showing what cosmic radiation hitting the camera does to the photographs. They are all white in color. Little white dots over the entire image. You can't see a thing looking at these photographs that MUFON told me, Bob, you're lying to people. The photographs I have are very, very crystal clear. There's no white dots across them. There's nothing that NASA says is because of cosmic radiation hitting the camera. Plus, they say it very clearly. No two cameras are hit at the same time. 2012, I have photographs from one camera showing things all sitting there waiting to be photographed, and then the other camera catching almost exactly the same thing. One camera looks really sharp at the sun, the other camera is backed off looking. So you got two cameras looking at the sun from different angles. And I've got these photographs where here's all these huge ships in the one camera. 15 minutes later, all you see is Taylor and Charlie just leaving the photograph. But the other camera zoomed in on the sun. Here's those two bottom ships that you can just make out, you just barely make out in the wide angle lens from the other one. And then 15 minutes later, they're totally gone. So we're being played with. I've had to research the holy heck out of this stuff before I went on anything, because my friends on Facebook, they tore all this stuff apart. One thing after the other, saying, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what you're talking about. You know, and I've come up with the exact images showing what I'm talking about. And I've gone back and back to the Soho NASA webpage where they show, oh, you can't do this because this stuff will hit one camera, but it can't hit two cameras. So all this stuff, you know, and they're not actually talking, but the MUFON people, which really ticked me off, they just basically challenged me to look further into this stuff. And I've found that what the MUFON people are saying against this stuff is totally BS. I've been able to look at one camera after the other, stereo ahead, stereo behind. Excellent images of all these things being picked up by the cameras. The SECHI, S-E-C-H-I, which is a U.S. Navy, has cameras on stereo and stereo ahead, stereo behind. They picked up numerous of these objects, but as soon as they got them, they erased them from their system. So if I go back to the SECHI cameras and I try and look down the database, nothing. I've got the photographs a friend sent me because they follow those cameras. Okay? And I have the date, the time, everything, and none of that lines up with what's in the U.S. Navy's files. Soho said very clearly on their webpage that they had fixed all the glitches that were in their programming, in their cameras from 1998 up to 2012. We're 2017. That these things are still being seen by these cameras. Now, several hundred times from 1998 up until 2013, these huge, massive whatevers were caught firing a huge, massive beam of energy and were hitting things. Several photographs showing this shows a beam going out to this from this huge ship 3 or more times. And if you look very closely at the images, the beams stop. But the third or fourth image keeps going or has a pointed end towards it, which means it didn't hit what they were aiming at. Now, a military friend of mine said, Bob, you don't know what you're even looking at. I said, okay, good. So I gave him a half dozen of these images. And he was working on a defense project. He said he put these things on the screen there at work, and they were blown away. They looked at the images with a spectral analysis type thing, a photographic spectral thing, and they said the beam that was being put out from that ship, that object, nailed all their readings, just pushed them right to the limit. They said that beam was highly something. He wouldn't tell me what. He said it put all their needles right to the edge when they looked at that beam and those beams coming from this thing. So I don't know what these things are doing. They're hitting something. I have one image where the beam hits something and you can see this aurora just starting to go around it. So it hits it. Are they hitting asteroids? Are they hitting other ships? I have no idea. But I have over 3,000 images showing the same thing over and over and over. Whether the ships are coming in, leaving, into our solar system. And these cameras know it very well. Now, all these other photographs I've been starting to show, you've seen them on numerous shows. Your listeners have been seeing it. We are catching enormous things in our skies, either from Dawn Hull with her very fancy, expensive camera which looks into the infrared, or anyone else with a video camera which takes things. Now you have to remember, the largest thing that started off 2016 was caught over Italy, Florence, Italy. A friend on Facebook saw something on her horizon that didn't look right. So she took a photograph of it. The sky was kind of cloudy, exhaust or whatever you want to call it, but there was this big orange thing right in her point of view where she was looking. And then she sent them off to have them personally enhanced. And when they were enhanced, this big red thing became clearer and clearer. Then she had the image reversed, where everything that was white became black, and black became white. And on her horizon, here's this humongous thing. And she said, or he said, I forgot now, that the sun was up to the left, not being seen in the image. So here's the sun way up near 11 o'clock, and this huge thing was right there being seen on her horizon. And the images keep coming in. And now people, for a long time there, 2015 into 2016, photographs were being taken off web cameras. Just like that one photograph showing the Neumayer Station 3 down in Antarctica. That is a U.S. government web camera taking that photograph. For a long time, they were all in black and white. Okay? Clearly showing this thing that they were tracking from before 2011 up to 2015 until it became very clear in their skies. Then other people found out where their color cameras were, and that was from a color camera, but that's the U.S. government or Jesuit camera taking those images. Another interesting thing here, I don't know if you've ever been able to listen to that Orion talk radio show I've sent you and a couple other people from 2012. It was from Morning Brew, the show starting about 12 o'clock in the afternoon. Luckily I saved that because Orion Talk Radio is off the air now. They closed down. And my friend said, Bob, what does radio show talk about? And it talked about this one person that used to be on Facebook, although her Facebook page is still there. Her Facebook name was Just Call Me Kit. So anyone that wants to go to Facebook, you'll still see her page right there. Now she did several shows in 2012 into 2013, then she hasn't been heard from since. She went on the show, and she was talking about all these U.S. government contracts that were on this certain type of web page. And she was, by her own words, a Tea Party Republican who was following all of the government contracts and how much they were spending. And what ticked her off was this other person that ran for U.S. president, and she didn't like all this office furniture that she had bought, huge amount. And then she started going into all this stuff that was being put up in, let's see, where is it? It's all going up into Nebraska, Wyoming. They were relocating all these government agencies, okay? But the big thing that caught my attention was that there's a huge, massive warehouse in one of these states. She doesn't say which one. She says that it's for emergencies, for emergency food to be sent out, either to other countries or to us, whatever. But this one contract came through starting at $73 billion in 2012 dollars to have 3 additional underground food storage bases being built. Okay? And these And she gave all the dimensions: 120,000 square feet for dry food storage, 40,000 square foot for cooler space, 20,000 square feet for a freezer. And then that's site A. Site B, 140,000 square. She was just reading off all this stuff on the air on the show. 60,000 square foot for a cooler, 40,000 for a freezer. Site C, 70,000 square foot for dry food. And then she mentioned that all the states, the United States, were divided up into A, B, C, and D. A has Alaska, Arizona, California, Colorado, Idaho, Montana, Nevada, New Mexico. I can go on and on. Site B, Site C. But she never mentioned Maryland or Massachusetts. No, I'm sorry, Mississippi, Washington, D.C., or Virginia. Let's talk about that briefly. See, Edgar Cayce, before he died in 1945, he put out maps of the United States for a future pole shift. And those maps are all over the internet, okay? Where the entire west coast is gone except for islands going up to Canada. The Great Lakes rip right down through the United States to the Gulf of Mexico. Most of the east coast is gone. Now, I've never been able to find exactly what Edgar Cayce meant by this map. But the U.S. government has been using these maps for the last 20 years or more for their high-ranking military officials when they retire. Originally, it was being leaked in almost every radio show that each one of these people were given this map and were told to not talk about it. And they were told when they retire in Colorado, the mountain states. What's that huge line of mountains on the East Coast back there, the Adirondacks, I think, Rex?
I'm not sure.
A lot of the people, they all got homes up in those mountains. And a lot of the...
You're talking about the Ozarks, aren't you?
Ozarks, it's that huge mountain range that's right there just in from the East Coast. I can't remember the exact name, but all these retiring military people were finding homes up in those mountains, that entire mountain range area. Colorado, back there. Interesting. And there have been several shows talking about this. Then John Moore started putting out these videos where he's a retired Marine and he went into military intelligence. And he started talking to different people during his career as military intelligence because he also knows there's something coming in. Okay? He calls it wormwood. This big red thing. Now, I'd like to talk to this guy because is wormwood the name for Nibiru? Or is wormwood the name for one of these red 8 things that's in our skies right now? Because John Moore goes into, well, more interesting details during his show. That things were being put underground. Well, let's see. Just Call Me Kit said, and she didn't say what state, she didn't say what museums, but she said very clearly in this radio show from 2012 that museums were putting everything underground in these 4 states. Now, the 2 people that were on the show, I'm quite sure they must have asked her beforehand, can you mention stuff? Can you not mention stuff? And during the show, they never asked her. What museums were putting things underground? 2012. These 3 additional huge underground storage places for food, water, and freezers were being built and they had to be built before 2013. All the contracts she mentions in that radio show, everything had to be done before 2013. Microwave repeater towers were being relocated up in these states. All these huge underground food storage places were being done. Now, John Moore and several other people were saying that there were new maps than what Edgar Casey put out in this stuff. And one of my friends on a different show, she sent me the maps. And they match up almost exactly with Edgar Casey's, but they show more stuff being missing. And those match up exactly with what's in that radio show. And several states are not mentioned in number A, B, or C. In the maps, they're gone. Okay? And these are additional maps from the Edgar Casey maps. Now, several other people, either working off Edgar Casey's information or whatever you want to call it, they started putting out videos showing the Earth's crust completely different. I'm going to look at the guy's name right now, because I got the video in my video files here. And he has a video. It's about, let's see, where is it right here? He has a video that, there, Michael Scallion. I've not been able to link up with this guy. It's called Future World Map, showing what would the entire planet look like after a future pole shift. And these maps look exactly identical to the maps that Edgar Casey had done up, where the entire west coast of the United States is gone. A huge area out in the Pacific, he calls it Lemuria, pops out of the ocean. So anyone looking across from Washington State over towards Japan would see this huge landmass right there. Now, we just recently had all those nasty earthquakes down there in New Zealand, right? Down there at that one area. According to Edgar Casey's maps, New Zealand comes well out of the water. It has its own land mass, far larger than New Zealand shows up in our maps now. Most of Europe is gone. Okay? According to these maps, you can go all the way back almost to Russia. All those Baltic states are underwater. My wife's parents are from the island of Malta, so I had to look at that. Malta doesn't exist anymore, according to these maps. The island of Sicily is gone. Most of Italy, except for a very little part up towards the Himalayan area, is all underwater. And this is all that's been projected into the future. Okay? John Moore goes into more detail from his intelligence background that all this stuff is going to start happening. It's going to be happening in stages, 1, 2, 3, where everything starts to go to heck without the basket, and everyone's going into hiding, martial law and stuff like that, and then further and further. So I have no idea whether you've had him on one of your shows, John Moore, or not. Might be interesting.
Yeah, John's been on the show a few times.
Okay. Now, I went back and I tried to watch some of your shows. Now, believe it or not, here in our facility here in Pacifica, the Wi-Fi has been so weak that when I try to download or even watch your shows, they stop. Okay? But if I go to Starbucks, I can sit and watch the whole thing. But then when I go to Starbucks, I don't have a heavy Wi-Fi, a fire to protect my laptop. So I've had some problems. I'm not going to pat these people on the back for what they've been doing to me. They've cost me quite a bit to the wife. Where my wife is not going to help me no more with these because we don't have the money anymore, and for this stuff. And yes, I know what you've been saying. You've been saying, well, Bob, have this thing on your Facebook page so people would send you money. But when you do that, you're more biased, at least my thinking, towards something like that. And I thought maybe an idea would, hey, please send me your old computers and, MUFON was after me at first. Bob, are you selling these photographs on your webpage? Starships around the sun? I said, no. I said, I'm not going to do that. Because I want the people that are listening to me on Facebook, on your show, on several other shows, know that I'm not getting paid in one way or another for this stuff. Okay? I'm just a simple person who's had to research the holy heck on my own. Possibly help from a contact, which I'm not going to mention. I've gone from one book to this book to that book to that book. I've been led to different web pages. I've been led to ancient texts which still survive, telling exactly what happened at least 3 times in human history. And the movie 2012 should have tipped off a lot of people. Because near the end of the movie 2012, you've got the Chinese monk up in his monastery. And he hears something. He turns his eye to the right and hears the ocean coming over the mountains. I mean, the ocean. So, because the Earth's crust had shifted, now all the oceans around the planet are going with the crust. Then when the crust stops, just like a person sitting in a bathtub, it just goes slop, slop, slop. And that's what they show in the movie 2012. Now that goes back to Chinese Emperor Yahoo, Yahou, 2900 BC, where this thing was seen coming out of the constellation of Yin, like Yin and Yang, and it caused the oceans to top the high mountains of China. It took them 13 years to drain all the water from the high mountain valleys back down to the rivers. And this emperor had to send out 4 teams to find out where north, south, east, and west was again. I didn't know the Chinese knew about the compass back then, but that's exactly the way it was said. The next time happened during Noah's time, and Noah is only mentioned in the Holy Bible. Zayasudra was mentioned in the Sumerian text, the tablets. So Noah went by 2 names. I have an ancient account from the Kolbrin that talks about how Zayasudra was warned by someone to build an ark. Now the king said, let's build this ark right down at the water. He said, no, no, no. We have to build it way up in the mountains near this one river. Just like in the movie 2012. They're built way up in the Chinese mountains. Now in the text, Noah is not mentioned. Zayasudra is mentioned. And the text go into very good detail how the ark was built. It follows the exact cubits as in the Holy Bible. They mentioned that they had the ark built in 7 days. There's 3 decks, a 4th deck on top, mostly for ventilation. Then the destroyer showed up. They closed the door, sealed the ark, and as the ark was floating away, they felt intense heat and intense cold. And it says exactly who went on the ark. Mentions all the names of the technicians or craftsmen. So many for working wood, so many for working stone, so many for working this. And it said very clearly one person who knew how to build chariots. Chariots. The Egyptians didn't know about chariots. The Hyksos came into Egypt during the 12th Egyptian dynasty, and they introduced the chariots to the Egyptians. So Noah, Ziusudra, and the ark became the Hyksos. In a 12th Egyptian tomb, on the walls, beautifully painted, were the Hyksos coming into Egypt. They took over the Nile Delta, and they stayed in there until the end of the 17th Egyptian dynasty, when this tremendous storm hit Egypt. See, also during that time, this is called the Exodus. Interesting. An Egyptian scribe named Ippawar detailed the entire account from the Egyptian point of view. During the Exodus, Ippawar said they felt the slaves and evildoers, they went all the way up to the Mediterranean, and they were stopped by a saltwater marsh. Ippawar says very clearly the ground below the saltwater marsh rose above the water, allowing the slaves and evildoers to race across the mud. He said very clearly they heard a tremendous roar. And there was volcanic ash falling all over Egypt during Ippawar's account. The only volcano that was erupting then was the ancient Greek island of Thera. 2 shows have gone there recently. Expedition Unknown and another show. They detailed their findings. The other show, Expedition Unknown, they went to the bottom of the crater with an ROV in the middle of Thera, now called Santorini. They picked up samples. The samples were carbon dated or something, some type of dating, putting it to 1615 BC. This other show, this other finding where they found an olive tree at the base of all of the volcanic ash. They carbon dated the burnt tree to 1613 BC. So now you have the Greek island of Thera erupting and almost destroying itself 1615, 1613 BC. Ippawar's account said volcanic ash was falling over Egypt when the slaves and evildoers were leaving. He detailed very clearly a tremendous roar and detailed a huge tsunami coming in, hitting Egypt. The tsunami killed the pharaoh because the Hyksos were using the term pharaoh for the Egyptians. Okay, cool. We have a date. We have the destroyer in the skies over Egypt, taking up almost 1/5 of the skies over Egypt during this Exodus, 1613, 1615 BC. Egyptian chariots were found over 20 years ago on the bottom of the Red Sea, and they date to the time of the 17th Egyptian dynasty. I've got photographs. It's on the internet, one thing after the other after the other. In several shows, the new Egyptian pharaoh, Akhmos I, Akhmos and his brother Kamos were the ones that led the Egyptians from the southern Egypt to push the Hyksos out. Kamos died. Akhmos became pharaoh. Akhmos, in several recent shows, roughly in Hebrew, means brother of Moses. Brother of Moses. There was a show years ago. I'm going to get the exact show here for you in a second. Okay. What's it? Cameron did the Titanic movie. He did it. And he had this one other person that's mostly over there in the Middle East doing all kinds of different shows. And this show was blasted by one person after another, saying this stuff isn't real. He didn't know what he was talking about. He's the one that says very clearly, it's the Exodus Decoded. Exodus Decoded with these two guys. And Cameron did an excellent show. You can't find it anymore unless you buy it. It's not on. It's barely on YouTube anymore at all. And he's the one. Very clearly, it says Akhmos with brother of Moses. That was 3,600 something years ago. And here we have a space probe called Silo being sent out by a joint venture from Israel, the Vatican, U.S. government. It goes well out past Pluto and meets up with Nibiru when it's on its way in during the 1990s. Sometime during about 1995. It videotaped Nibiru, the planet, and did whatever else. It came all the way back using a very advanced propulsion system, downloaded everything to a secret Jesuit base up on a HARP facility up in Alaska. Okay? This was all leaked in early 2000 by a high-ranking Jesuit priest who went out of the Vatican and went to talk to Christopher Barbato, an Italian reporter who was talking about aliens and stuff. Christopher Barbato researched this person, and he was a Jesuit, never mentioned any names. He told his friend Lucas Cantamburlo, who was part of Project Camelot. Project Camelot did a 2-hour show, which is on YouTube, called The Return of Planet X. A 2-hour show. Here's part 1, here's part 2. Lucas Cantamburlo was very nice. He added a transcription of everything that was said in both videos that anyone can read. He said very clearly that Eisenhower, with the Bishop of Los Angeles, Francis McIntyre, met with these aliens in 1954. Now, this one person who was there with Randolph Hearst's group, Gerald Light, he was also sworn to secrecy after this meeting, but he decided to write a letter to his friend. And after his friend died, his friend's wife found the letter. And I have a copy of it, where Gerald Light went through all the background check and everything. He was allowed in there. And he said in his letter that they met with several races. One was an interdimensional race called the Etherians. Interesting there. Interdimensional race. He went on to say that all these high-picked Western scientists, their jaws were on the ground when they watched a huge block of something dematerialize right in front of their eyes. He used the term dematerialization. A friend of mine years ago with LexisNexis did a search on that. That term was not used until 1965. in any book, story, or movie until Star Trek. Interesting. Interdimensional races. Okay, now we jump to today. There's a lot of ghost story shows on now. The Dead Files. The Dead Files. Amy and her friend, who used to be a New York City homicide detective, they went up to the state of Oregon on one show. Now, she can see ghosts, she can talk to them, and she very clearly in the show said that she saw a portal and interdimensional creatures and beings were coming into our point of view here in 2016, 2017. Interdimensional creatures and beings. And in a recent show, she used the term aliens that she was seeing in and around this one house. Okay, we've all heard about that huge magnet thing over in Switzerland called the CERN. You've heard about that, haven't you, Rex? That huge, that thing has been playing around trying to open up other dimensions. Now, a friend of mine told me a lot of her patients are talking about the Mandela effect. Look up Mandela effect on Google. It's talking where people are seeing interdimensional things happening. And this is becoming more and more prevalent. Interdimensional beings, interdimensional creatures. Now, if a word to spread, Gerald, hold on a second. The Holy Bible mentions angels coming down and they glow. Okay? Almost all the way through the Holy Bible, the angels glowed. Okay? Gerald Light, in his letter to his friend, said very clearly that this interdimensional race called the Etherians, they glowed. He could very clearly see the glowing effect. So now we have glowing beings that were seen at what used to be called Muroc Army Emergency Airfield, now Edwards Air Force Base. He was there with Randolph Hearst's team, which was invited by Eisenhower. Bishop of Los Angeles, Francis McIntyre, was personally asked to be there with Eisenhower, to be his spiritual advisor. Now, the bishop refused to be sworn under God to never mention what he saw again. He went straight back to Rome and spoke personally with Pope Pius XII. This is mentioned in the show that Lucas Cantamburlo did in 2008. He said the Pope was told all about this. The Pope didn't like it because there were two alien races living on the earth in 1954 that you could not tell from another person. They were walking amongst us. No one knew they were there. So the Pope put an archbishop over the bishop and started a joint thing between the United States and the Vatican. The Vatican has been following this ever since. When Pope Benedict retired, he went on one or two German radio shows and he blasted the Jesuits for their alien agenda. Now, in this radio show by Just Call Me Kit, she mentions that one of these states has a compound which is in direct communication with the Vatican. John Moore also mentions it. Doesn't mention which state. No state is named directly, but these four states, Montana, Nebraska, North Dakota, South Dakota. Microwave communication towers were being relocated onto the upper Great Plains. The Department of Treasury, Department of Energy are also being relocated into those states in 2012. John Moore recently, within the last couple months, mentioned the CIA is going to be relocated up there into those 4 states. Too much of this stuff has been leaking by whomever for whatever reason, either to cover their own tails. They know this stuff is coming. John Moore mentions it directly. He has the intelligence stuff behind him, not this funky Bob on Facebook looking at all these space age cameras and satellites and stuff. This is John Moore, who has his own radio show, who has his own intelligence friends that are telling him that he knows what's coming. And he's also talking about a pole shift. He says it's going to be because of wormwood. Now, almost everyone else was saying that since the Nibirian system is going through our solar system clockwise, and since the Earth in our system is orbiting counterclockwise, that's the reason why these 8 things in our skies have grown larger and larger and larger ever since they first appeared in the skies, April 10th, 2015. They were just little tiny dots or something really clearly seen. All of the photographs you have seen from your contacts, from my contacts I've shown you, these things are growing larger and larger and larger. And that's because it's going underneath our sun and coming up the other side, and we're orbiting right towards it. Because we're orbiting counterclockwise, right to left, it's orbiting left to right. We're seeing 8 of its 13 satellites in our skies. And anyone with a telescope, anyone with a nice camera, when the skies are clear enough where they can take a photograph, are taking the photographs. And those 21 or 22 photographs I sent you for tonight's show, they're clearly showing something. You're more of an expert on these photographs than I am. You clearly picked out several different things that I didn't know about and I couldn't see. But the other things, I'm quite sure you were just as interested in. People listening to your show are also sometimes smart people that know about photography. I've had one person after another pick my photographs apart on Facebook up to a certain point. Then they all stopped. Because they knew these photographs were being caught by web cameras from observatories, from people that were taking really good photographs, taking really good videotapes, just digital video cameras. These things are in the skies. Now, John Moore seems to also seem to think it's coming up real soon. Almost all of the top name people I can think of have been saying dates somewhere around May of 2017. And John Moore is saying almost the exact same stuff. So here's a guy with intelligence background, intelligence friends which are handing over stuff to him. Here's this lady which hasn't been heard from since 2012 in this one radio show, talking about museums putting stuff underground up in those 4 states. Those 3 additional huge underground food storage things starting off at $73 billion in 2012 dollars. And they had to be done by 2013. Now, I'm quite sure you also know what the remote viewers said was supposed to have happened by June 1st, 2013. The doctor's going to kick my butt for not remembering his name. But he had a remote viewer show, a project that went from 2008 to 2013. They said these huge asteroids fell into the oceans all around the planet, and they wiped out whole sections of the planet. Hawaiian Islands were wiped clean. One landed in the Indian Ocean and sent a tidal wave up to the foothills of Mount Kilimanjaro. Down there in Australia, the capital city right there, was heavily damaged by these humongous waves, which were put out because these things hit in the oceans. They said Washington, D.C. was shattered remnants. People were living under the debris. It's not being cooked by the sun. They smelt rotting vegetation. They said that everywhere around the planet there was no one rising to help the survivors. There was no emergency transportation, no emergency food. They were all running away from the coastlines. Well, it didn't happen in 2013. And this one doctor, if I remember, he's called a doctor, he said, well, maybe just this one timeline went through the bottleneck. And that's why it didn't happen. Okay? But it seems very clearly to all these leaked information that the governments were expecting things to happen before 2013. That's why all these government contracts had to be done before 2013.
I got to say, Bob, this has just been a ton of information, and every time you come on the show, you really bring not only good images, but data as well. I really appreciate it, and ladies and gentlemen, definitely check out starshipsaroundthesun.com if you'd like to see many of these photos that have been taken for several years from, I think it's the stereo behind the sun as well as stereo in front of the sun. And also, ladies and gentlemen, check out leakproject.com and youtube.com/clandestine Time Lord. Thanks a lot, Bob. This has been great. Hopefully we'll have an opportunity to speak again soon.
Okay, you know where to find me. Thank you. It's an honor to be on your show. Excellent. A lot of my friends on Facebook, they love your show.
Well, that's much appreciated. Everybody that I've ever talked to that listens to Leak Project seems to be awake, seems to be, with their intentions in the right place. So it's been great to meet everybody so far. I've really appreciated that as well. And question everything, ladies and gentlemen. Be the change you want to see. Thanks again, Bob. This has been great.
No problem. Thank you, Rex.
How are things going with starships around the sun? I think that you've got some great stills and images on that website of what looks like Anunnaki spaceships, just incredible images.
Well, okay. One of my friends on Facebook, she's with this one group, and they've been tracking this stuff for years. And a lot of the first images that turned me on to this came from their group also. And they're still tracking the same images today. She's part of I can't remember the name of their group right now. They call these huge images that look like starships, they are saying that that image is Nibiru itself, period. No ifs, ands, or buts. I've caught that same image going back, looking through the Soho camera photographs. And the best image I have is from 2005 from the EIT 304 camera, which is a ultra extreme, ultraviolet, something like that. And here it is coming down the left-hand side of our sun. And it's trailing like a green exhaust of some type. I've shown those images at UFOCon 213, and a lot of other people that were there, they said, Bob, do you realize how big that thing is next to our sun? I said, no extra on this side. They said, that thing's almost the size of our planet. And I had to do further research into that thing. And the ancient Zoroastrian religion in what's now Iran, they have huge wall carvings of the same thing still over there in Iran, about 15, 20 feet long, wide. And the interesting part of these images is that you look downwards and you don't see birds' feet. You see two poles coming down at angles. You see round wheels or a round object at the end of each one. Interesting, a flying craft of some type. And here's an Anunnaki carving right there in the center of this whole huge image. The Zoroastrians call this the Ahura Mazda. Now, I'm not even going to play, with Middle Eastern languages. I've been told many people say it's different things. But here's the Anunnaki Enki standing right in front of it. A couple of images show him looking to the right. A couple of images show him looking to the left in these carvings. Now, my friends that are really good at this Anunnaki stuff say, yes, Anunnaki Enki was the one who started the Zoroastrian religion. And that's why they had these huge wall carvings made showing this huge bird's outstretched wings with the landing gear. Not bird's feet, landing gear. Very clearly. And then when I looked at the image from 2005, was this thing coming down the left-hand side of our sun, and you look at that and you look at the other image of the wall carvings and you match them up, they're an exact match. Now, John Gress, a filmmaker, he started making a movie in 2005 or 6 called One Anunnaki. And he took the same type of image and he had the thing depicting a flying craft coming over the earth. Here's a human looking up at it. Here's the outstretched wings. Here's this huge circular viewing window looking down. So he depicted it exactly using that same type of wall, those huge images from Soho. Now, between 1999 and present day, the Soho satellite with all of its cameras have caught this same image coming in from every point of the compass on the camera, either entering our solar system or leaving our solar system. And several times after 2011, it has caught this huge thing. There's a huge flash in the sky. And the camera caught this huge flash. And this thing comes flying out of the flash. And using my own term here, is quickly decelerating as the picture caught it coming out of this huge flash. Now, anyone who's ever watched Star Trek, the newer movies, okay, including the last movie where Picard had to go to Romulus, and his ship is being chased by this huge Romulan, it's not Romulus, it's this other race that lives on the moon, and this other huge ship was chasing them, and they took out their warp drive engines, and then it suddenly just shot underneath their ship. And then there's a spot where Star Trek has a big flash, and there's the Enterprise zooming out of it. So, 2011, on numerous photographs, I have these huge ships quickly decelerating in the image, or it's trailing dry plasma behind it. Two images I have from Soho. Here's the ship that had just come out, and you can see it's trailing dry plasma. Then right really close to, on the other side of the sun at the bottom, here's this flash. It's quickly decelerating. So SOHO has been picking up these tremendously large ships coming out of whatever term you want to use. Hyperspace, wormholes, warp drive. I mean, you know, we've been bombarded with all kinds of space-type stuff since Star Trek. So all of us can use different types of terms on this thing, but the photographs, I don't think, lie, because they take a photograph every 15 minutes. Now, either these things are caught when they're first showing up, and then they put their cloaking shields on, because they're not in the next 15-minute photograph. I don't know what's happening. SOHO said, and a lot of the MUFON people were saying, Bob, you don't know what you're talking about here. That's cosmic rays hitting the cameras, doing this and doing that and doing this. And I haven't had a chance recently to send you the photographs that SOHO took themselves, showing what cosmic radiation hitting the camera does to the photographs. They are all white in color. Little white dots over the entire image. You can't see a thing looking at these photographs that MUFON told me, Bob, you're lying to people. The photographs I have are very, very crystal clear. There's no white dots across them. There's nothing that NASA